Welcome to the Man Up, Man Down podcast, presented by Volker Beluda and David Pawsey. We discuss the pressures and challenges faced by men approaching middle age that we're often too embarrassed to speak about with our friends. You can find us online at www.manupdown.com. Enjoy the show and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
Brilliant. So welcome to another episode of Man Up, Man Down. And it's a pleasure to have John Richardson on the podcast. So John and I actually work together at my sales coach, or I work for him really. So he's my boss kind of. And John is sharing his story. So as a 31-year-old father of two, and it's now less than a year ago actually, less than a year into you launching my sales coach, you received a life-changing diagnosis, and I remember that actually very vividly when I was like, "What the fuck? What's happening?" And it was, and I hope I pronounced it right, acute promyelocytic leukemia, also known as APL-M or something like that. You will fill us in, Don. So, additionally to that, you have type 1 diabetes, retinopathy. It's another word I can't pronounce. There we go. It's a great start to a podcast here. Thank you, John. Just putting me out there, right? So add that to the mix. I know you had lots of hospital appointments recently, but I also have seen a video with a TMI, to be honest, when you rang the bell to be cancer-free. So that was very encouraging. So first of all, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for joining us to share your story. Over to you. Tell us your story.
Thank you. No, it's a real pleasure to be here, and really happy to kind of share my story. And when you're putting together a bio like that, you always kind of try and make it sound as dramatic as possible. And we'll see if the story lives up to that drama. But yeah, I guess where would you like me to start? I guess maybe a brief bit about founding the business and kind of how that then falls into maybe the worst year of my life. So beginning of 2023, launched my sales coach with a couple of co-founders, where we were aiming to kind of revolutionize sales coaching by providing world-class coaches like yourself, Volker, to sales professionals all over the world. And so we launched in the January and had a really great start, really kind of progressing quickly, and started to build a team both on the coaching side and then internally as well. And around October in 2023, we went to an event in Dublin, and I had a rubbish night's sleep the first night and didn't feel very well after that, and thought, I've not slept very well. I've been on an aeroplane. I'm just getting a heavy cold. As the week went on, it became a bit worse, and I kind of thought it's conference sickness. You know, you go to a conference and everybody's shaking hands and coughing and, flying in from wherever they've traveled in from. And so by the end of the week, flying home, I was just as ill as I've ever been, really. Well, at that point, headache, blocked nose, sore throat, all of those kind of things. And so I went home. My wife, we had 12 hours of crossover before she was heading to Australia for 2 weeks to go to her cousin's wedding. So we had a night in a hotel where we didn't even speak to each other, just kind of went to bed and went to sleep, and then dropped her at the airport again in the morning. And then thought that I'd kind of let the side down by being so unwell, looking after my kids for the 2 weeks on my own, being a lone man at home, because I just wasn't well enough to kind of do anything. So they went to my mum and dad's, and I went to the doctors like a couple of days later, and they told me that I had strep throat. So I thought, there we go, that's it, sorted. I'll take some antibiotics, I'll get better, everything will be fine. The sore throat went, but I didn't really get better. I didn't kind of get my energy back. I didn't get any motivation back, really. But as we tend to do as men, I just kind of went back to work and cracked on. Started taking painkillers to keep things going, thinking this is just like, maybe it's long COVID or something, you know, the things that you hear but don't really know what they are. But never crossed my mind that there was anything more sinister going on. Never even considered it. So about a month later, my wife's back from Australia. I'm taking cocodamol. Maybe not every day. You know, I'm taking paracetamol 2 or 3 times a day, but bit of cocodamol when I've got a big meeting or when I've got something a bit heavier to do. And it was the Sunday night, and we were going to bed, and my wife turns to me and says, "Something's not right." And I thought it was an attack on my kind of style of husbandry or parenting. You know, I thought she was commenting on like, "You're being a bit off with me. You're being a bit funny with the kids," or things like that. And so I was a bit offended. I'm like, "What are you talking about? What are you on about? Like, everything's fine." She's like, "No, no, no, there's just something not right with you." And I was like, "No, no, no, I'm fine." She said, "You need to go and see the doctor." And I said, "Well, I'll ring the doctor in on Wednesday. If I'm still feeling like this in 3 days, I'll ring the doctor." So, I mean, I live in York and I work in Newcastle. That's where our office is. And so Monday morning, I was driving up to Newcastle. So I woke up at, 10 to 6, got dressed, got ready, took some cocodamol, drank a can of Monster to get myself lifted up and ready for the day. And I felt great. I got to Newcastle. We had a client meeting in the morning, and I was like, "Oh, I'm back to normal. This is how I should feel." Did a really great job in the meeting, and then went back to the office. And all of a sudden, the lights just felt a little bit too bright. Everything was just a little bit out of focus and didn't feel great. So I thought I'll have some lunch, and maybe I'm just a bit hungry. Maybe, I'm diabetic, so maybe my blood sugars are a little low. Maybe I'm a bit tired. I'll be fine. Fortunately for me, my colleagues didn't agree, and 2 of them within 10 minutes walked into the office, saw me, and said, "John, what's going on? You don't look right." And I'm like, "No, no, it's fine. The lights are just a bit bright," which is a weird thing to say. That's not a normal reaction to "you don't look well." So they made me call 111. They asked me to go into A&E. So Kevin, my CEO, my co-founder, took me to A&E and was there for a few hours. The doctor that saw me was just checking everything, testing my reflexes in my legs, squeezing my arms and legs and abdomen to see if there were anything he could feel, taking loads of blood tests. And for a long time, it felt like he's got no idea here. He's doing all the right things, but he kept looking confused and had no real clue what was going on. Eventually, he comes and tells me I'm anemic, at which point I'm like, that's the answer. My mum's anemic. I'm anemic. That's why I'm tired. They'll give me some iron. I'll be fine. So I turned to Kevin and said, "You've been with me for hours. I'm anemic. My wife's on her way up to come and see me because they told me already I was going to stay in overnight. You can go home. Like, I'm good now. It'll be fine." So he heads off, and about 10 minutes later, they move me to where I think is going to be my ward for the night, but it's a waiting room. And then a doctor comes and he calls me in and he takes me into a quiet room. And at this point, there's still nothing going through my mind. There's no clocking of like, why is he taking me into a quiet room? There's a tissue box there, nothing's registering as, there's anything serious going on here. And he's asking me all the same questions that I've been asked all day. And he asked me about my family history of health. And each time I'd been asked that throughout the day, I'd remembered more things that I'd kind of been forgetting about. So I'm like, "Well, I'm diabetic. I've got 2 siblings that are diabetic. I've got a cousin that's diabetic. Oh, my grandma had a few heart attacks. And oh yeah, I had some grandparents with dementia." I was like, "Oh, and I've just remembered my granddad had leukemia twice." And the doctor says, "Well, John, you've got leukemia." At which point, my first thought was, "You're only saying that because I've just said it." That's, you're not, this isn't real. This isn't a serious thing. You're just repeating what I've said. But it was serious and he was correct. And So started to explain it. And then, I mean, there's lots more that I'm sure you're going to ask about, but that then turned into 6 weeks in hospital, 3 of them in Newcastle, 200 miles from home and a long way from everybody. And then 3 in York, hospital over Christmas. I saw one of my daughters once in that 6-week period, the other one a couple more times. And then, yeah, nearly a year of treatment before in August last year being able to ring the bell, being cancer free. So that's the long and well, that's the short story of how the year went. And then I guess to kind of tee it all off, in October last year, due to 20 years of being diabetic and the anemia at the beginning of the leukemia, they noticed some changes in my eyes due to the lack of oxygen and too much sugar in my blood, which meant that I've had about 8,000 burns in my eyes to kill off blood vessels that were growing that were going to be dangerous, and then a vitrectomy in both of my eyes, which is pretty grim. Maybe a trigger warning. Is where they take the jelly out of your eyes and untangle all of the veins that are growing in the jelly so that it can kind of soothe the retina. So yeah, it's been quite the year, really.
Wow. There's a lot in there, John. And obviously, as you know, I lived through it. Obviously, not like you lived through it, right? But I saw the Slack messages and the videos, and it's quite dramatic. You talking about it, was like, yeah, just that happened. It's it. Are you? Did you manage to get quite a distance from it by now, or
So
not really?
definitely have some distance from it now. I have my own podcast where I recorded an episode every day for the 6 weeks I was in hospital, but 1 year on, kind of reflecting on that experience, and that definitely helped. But I think there's a couple of kind of thoughts on that. I think my experience of it definitely felt dramatic in the moment, but your experience of it is very matter of fact. Like, the things just happen to you, and although there are moments of it, like that moment where he told me I had leukemia, is an out of body
Yeah.
experience. You feel like you're watching a film where it's happening to somebody else, even though you're feeling all the emotions. You kind of raise up out of your body and watch yourself while feeling those things happen. But a lot of it is just it happens very matter of fact. It's not it's not like epic moments of a story that happened that you're able to watch and recognize the significance of at all those times. And I think someone that came to visit us while I was in Newcastle, a family friend who actually performed my wedding, he said to me, "John, you'll get over this. Your wife will have scars. Maddie will have scars for a long time for this," which I thought was interesting at the time, and I felt a little bit like, hang on, I'm feeling this. I'm having all these experiences as well. But I think that's true. I think it's definitely easier for me to talk about, and really cathartic for me to talk about, in a way that it isn't
Yeah.
for my wife. For her, it's quite painful to talk about and reflect on. And she probably, I say probably, she definitely has a better memory of a lot of it than I do. Um, when you're that
Yeah.
sick, a lot of it is happening around you rather than to you, in your memory at least.
Yeah. So you just talked about the out of body experience when you got the diagnosis. What was your first reaction? Was it like, shit, I'm gonna die? Or did you know about leukemia? I mean, to be honest, I have no idea about leukemia. So if a doctor said to me I have leukemia, I would go like, shit, that's it, right? That's the end. But you said it runs in your family. I don't know if it's inherited or if you can inherit it,
So
or
my type isn't inherited. They made
right.
that really clear really quickly. He said, this is nothing you've done. you've not got this from anybody and you can't give this to anybody. So don't, they were very explicit. Do not worry about your children because you've got this. But no, I didn't really know about it. The first time my granddad had leukemia, I was very young and didn't know that had happened until many years later. The second time, he was very old, and so I didn't know really, is he sick because he's old or sick because he's got leukemia? There was a lot of bloodlines and a lot of other things going on. So I definitely had no specific experience of leukemia at all. I think that, I mean, the honest truth was the first question I asked is, when am I going back to work? And when he said not for a while, I said, this is really inconvenient. This is not a good time.
I would be the same, to
Yeah,
be honest.
and all of I never thought I was going to die. That thought did not cross my mind, not until 5 weeks in hospital, where a doctor was explaining some of the things that had happened, and it was like, hang on, just he talked about it quite matter of fact about how it was touch and go, and I was like, what? What do you mean it was touch and go? Help me understand. How close was I there?
Ooh.
But no, it never really crossed my mind that I might die. It was all the practical questions that were flooding my mind. What's going to happen with work? What's going to happen with money? What's
Yeah.
going to happen with the things that I want to achieve? How long is this going to impact me? And maybe a little bit of, where is this going to leave me? Am I going to be? Is this something where I'm sick forever now? And
What?
this is the next 20 years of my life and all of that, or is it something that's going to be shorter and quicker? And yeah, but I had no concept of the healthcare side of it, of what would happen. Everything from there on in was a surprise. I had no concept of how long I'd be in hospital, even though they started to tell me some of those things. Just didn't sink in at all, really. And so it was all of the, when can I do this? When can I go and get home? When can I go back to work? When can I be thinking about the future? Was all of the things that really went through my head.
Hello folks, it's Volker here. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. As you know, I coach executives, whether that is for leadership skills, or sales leadership skills, or working as a therapist too. There are few ways I can help you to get unstuck, improve your work-life balance, or become a better version of yourself. So you will be more productive and have more time for your family. Whatever it is, you can join my client list of people from General Electric, Pepsi, DHL, Boots, and many others. Book a free exploratory call via my website, www.obnat.us. That's OBNAT.us. Now back to the show.
Oh, I've got a couple of questions, John. Well, thanks first of all for sharing your experience, and I think obviously the reason you've done it is to help people. Well, obviously it's been quite cathartic for you, but also, yeah, helps like other, individuals and families going through a similar thing. So, yeah, thanks so much for sharing your story. There's sort of something you've just sort of touched on there, about being so driven. And I'm going to sort of come at that from two angles. The first of all, excuse me, sort of, the question I have is like, well, if you were working for somebody else, do you think you would have sort of been more, maybe not aware of your body, but be a bit more like, oh, something's wrong. But, do you think that you sort of ignored it because you were so focused on business and stuff? But on the flip side, I sort of completely understand that drive then got you out of it, in a lot of ways, in that, having that sort of goal of, well, when can I do this, rather than I hope I get to do this, and it's a very sort of subtle difference. But so, yeah, do you think there you would have spotted it earlier if, you weren't sort of starting up but also, yeah, does that sort of entrepreneurial spirit and that mindset, well, and that sales mindset as well, of kind of battling on when the economy's not great, the market's not great. I think as a salesman, you've got to have that mindset, don't you?
Yeah, I'd like to say that if I was working for someone else, I'd have done something different about it. I think the truth is none of my symptoms were what you'd expect. And I know I had blood cancer, so I'm not going to find a lump anywhere for blood cancer because that's
Mm.
not how it works. But the truth is, like, all of the symptoms I could put on other things I'd felt in the past. The only difference was that it didn't go away, really. I've I've had I wasn't vomiting. I wasn't unable to do the things that I was normally doing. I was just tired and heady. And so although the doctors made comments about it's impressive that you've managed to work so long if you've had this and all that, I just didn't think about it. I just didn't think this is a serious illness. I just thought I'm just a bit unwell and it'll go away if I keep going. And maybe that is less common than I realize, but yeah, I've not had a lot of time off work in my career in general. I remember a week I had off once because I was vomiting, but that was all week, and it was I was incapacitated. I wasn't incapacitated at this time. As soon as I got into hospital, I was. I very quickly got worse in hospital, but I'd run a meeting that morning with a new customer that went really well, so I was able to do the things that I needed to do each day. So yeah, I'm not sure really whether it's a personal drive or just that I wasn't, I didn't feel as ill as I really was. Is maybe the truth of that.
I mean, it's an extraordinary story. Obviously, the diabetes was there before, right?
Yeah.
And that often continues. If I understand correctly, you said all your eye problems, and I know you had surgery twice in the last few months. That's now all solved, but it was due to the leukemia.
Yeah. So the
Yeah,
diabetes is going to be forever. That is a chronic
yeah,
illness. So yeah, the eye problems are the type of thing you get if you have diabetes for a long time. They talk about it being a matter of time before you run into some of these. I think had I have not have had the leukemia, I'd probably have had another 10 or 15 years before I'd have bumped into these problems. But the leukemia
yeah.
just triggered it as kind of a kickoff for it to go from normal to not normal. So yeah, it's they do a lot of laser eye surgery, but it's not the fun kind where you get to see better afterwards, but the the sad kind where it hurts and just is uncomfortable and you don't see the benefit, you just don't get worse as a result. And
Right.
then as a result of the laser stuff they do, that's why you need the surgeries to then kind of clean out your eye a little bit because your retina burns and scars and scrunches up a bit, and so they try and clear it out so that it flattens. And so yeah, it's been a few months of not being able to see out of one eye for a little bit, and then that one had the surgery and it started to recover, and then the other one went worse, and so that one needed the surgery and couldn't see out of that one. And so now I can see out of both eyes reasonably well, but they're still learning to see together. So everything's a little bit double
Wow.
at the moment. So I feel like I'm on a podcast with 6 people rather than just 3. Um, but yeah.
So is that something that you'll have to have like on a regular basis, or is that
Like active.
has that fixed
Yeah,
the
so
issue?
hopefully it's fixed it. They don't really know. The surgeries they talk about being the nuclear option because they end the war. So I think it'll take.
Can we not use
Yeah, I
those sort
know.
of phrases in the current environment?
Honestly, the doctor I've got, he is the king of analogies. He uses so many. But yeah, that's the one he likes to use. But he the settling of the eyes can take around a year. So I don't really know what my sight will be like, but they do think that there won't be too much more they need to do until either I get cataracts. There's some advantages to diabetes that make cataracts less likely, something to do with not having enough oxygen to make cataracts happen. And then the next one will be, I can't remember what it's called, but they think I've got another 20 years before they'll need to have any kind of serious problems, which is comforting. After everything has recently happened so quickly and you feel like you break one barrier and then all of a sudden you've got another one, it's nice to have some runway to feel like it's going to be a little while before anything else happens, hopefully.
You got to be our age when you need an ox operation.
See, that doesn't fill me with confidence because I don't see you as that much older than me.
Yeah, you look at me, you're like, oh no. But I mean, it's interesting what you say there, because you were 31 when it happened,
Yeah.
right? So you're now, 31 and a half, 32.
just
You know.
33, so yeah, a lot older.
Yeah, I mean, you're not, if I say you're not even midlife, right? I mean, why you're on this podcast? But it's like,
Imposter.
it's it's crazy, right? I mean, a lot of people, and as listeners would know, right? We had I just looked at his LinkedIn earlier. No, I forgot. Ian Saunders. Yeah, we had him on, and he had prostate cancer, but he's midlife. I think he's early. Is he 50 yet? I don't actually know. And we had other people on who had prostate cancer as well, and and they're all, you almost expect having some sort of cancer when you get to your 40s, 50s.
So you've got all this fun to look forward to, John.
Yeah, so you're quite young. I mean, what are the chances of you developing leukemia again? And or, I mean, is there a greater chance to develop cancer? Does it mean you cut out all red meat, all the booze, you go completely vegan and that's it for the next 20, 50 years? So you have a life expectancy to midlife? Or, I mean, how does it work in your brain as well? I don't know.
That is a really good question. The big risk for me immediately is within the first year of being clear. That's when they're most worried about it coming back. My numbers are great. They're really happy with my numbers and they're really positive about where I'm at. But yeah, I think it's the first year is the biggest risk. The next 3 years are then the next biggest risk, and then it drops off, and they tend to see that it doesn't come back after that. I read recently, or saw a video recently, of someone talking about how one of the reasons cancers seem to be increasing is because most cancer treatments are carcinogenic in themselves. And so by having cancer and surviving, you're slightly
Wow.
more likely to have cancer again than if you'd never had cancer. Plus, you're still somebody that's alive to be that 1 in 2 people that can have cancer that, you wouldn't have been 10, 15, 20, 40 years ago. So I don't know for sure that my treatment makes me any more likely to have a different type of cancer in the future. Because of the type of cancer I had, I don't think there's a greater risk of me having that one again beyond the immediate risk. I think in terms of lifestyle, though, it's a really hard one, because one of the things I found hardest was that it was not my fault. If it was my fault, I can own it. All of the hard things in my life, other than maybe definitely diabetes, which isn't my fault, but every other hard thing I've ever had to deal with has been because I've done something silly and ended up in a situation that I have to fight my way out of. If I'm behind on my number in sales, it's my fault. I have to do something about that, but I can own that. It's my fault that I'm where I am. If I make a mistake at work for some other reason, it's my mistake. I can own that. I can do something to rectify that situation. I break a relationship or whatever, anything that I've generally had to experience, it's my fault, my problem. I can fix this. Wasn't my fault. I got cancer. There was no, nothing in my lifestyle, nothing that I'd done to get it. So, couldn't really own it as a mistake that was like, great, I can learn from this and not do this again. And also, there was very little I could do to fix it. I just had to wait. I just had to go through what they were doing to me. And so in some ways, your question there, Volker, doesn't, I've definitely
Yeah.
not had an increase in motivation to live a lifestyle that avoids things that make me more likely to have it, because it can happen whatever you do. My experience is hard, difficult things happen whether you try your best to avoid them or do whatever you want. And so tough a little bit, like, what will happen will happen.
Yeah.
Having said that, although the doctors talk about it not being my fault because the cancer triggered the eye problems, that's definitely, I've seen a much bigger change in my behavior as a result of that, because I am in more control, I feel, of preventing future problems along those lines. I mean, the truth is that my diabetes control in the last 5 years has been the best it's ever been anyway, but in the last year it's been even better because, well, when you're in hospital doing nothing, it's very easy to control your diabetes. And when they're testing your blood sugars for you all the time, like that makes it easy in one way. But then even after that, through recovery, your life becomes a bit more patterned. And so you can have a bit better control. But the motivation of the eye problems definitely makes me far more conscientious about that side of things. Yeah, and so I feel kind of in two minds. I don't, cancer isn't something that I worry about, and maybe that's because I've had it, and I kind of know what happens now in a way that I wouldn't before. Um, and do I live a healthy lifestyle? Absolutely not, is the truth of it. But there are many things that I don't do. I don't drink at all. I never have. That's just not part of my life. I don't smoke and have zero intention of doing that. So my biggest unhealthiness is diet and sleeping pattern and like routine. But again, I'm probably not a good example of. And so obviously there is a lot I can do to control that, but I'm planning, now that the eyes are settling, I'm going to start running again and exercising a bit more, which I think will help with my diabetes, helping my diet improve. That will obviously be a better journey for me. But I think I find it healthy in my head to not worry, other than doing things that make me feel better. Like, I know that if I exercise more, I feel better about myself. I know that if I try to eat better generally and then indulge it now and again, that I feel better in myself than I do if I just eat trash all the time. And so I feel like you never know what's going to happen, right? You could put all that effort in and get hit by a bus. So the point is living a sustainably
Yeah.
happy and healthy life rather than stressing about the impact of every single choice you make. I think I find that difficult to get my head around in a way that would help me to enjoy however long life I've got. Hopefully many, many years. But
So, I mean, has it sort of made you more appreciative, or given you like a second bite of, do you feel like you've got a second chance? And has that changed your, well, the way that you are? I mean, it sounds like you had a fairly strong mindset anyway, like the things happen in life to challenge us, right, regardless of what we do. So yeah, like there's things you can control and things you can't. So it sounds like you already had that mindset, but do you, and your wife obviously sort of said there's something not right. I mean, has she sort of seen a change in you since your
so
recovery?
I don't know if I've got a good answer for the second part of that question. I've not asked her that question explicitly. And I'd probably need to give her a fair bit of time to kind of think that through. Her initial answer would be something along the lines of, "Why are you asking me stupid questions?" Not that I that's just very much her tone. I think it's a great question personally. Um, but I think for me, the big changes. Second chance isn't how I see it, because I didn't think I was going to die, and I know the doctors might have,
Mm.
but that was only communicated to me past that point, and so it's not a
Mm.
sense of I nearly died, therefore I've got a second chance. I think there's been two major shifts that I've noticed in my mindset. The first one is I am incredibly more aware of how horrible people's lives can be for them. And so I'm way more tolerant isn't the right word, but I'm way more tolerant of people that are having a hard time for whatever reason, or that might seem like they're having a hard time, because I just assume that people have it worse than either or than you are. Constantly throughout my time in hospital, after being in hospital and going in for appointments, I've met people and seen people where I would never want to trade places. Like, telling this story, people are like, "That sounds horrible." I've seen worse. I've seen worse. I didn't lose my hair. Not that that is a major thing, but I didn't lose my hair. I was only in hospital for 6 weeks. No one told me I was gonna die, or that there was a high chance of me dying. Like, we had a friend, who was in her mid-40s pass away from cancer a couple of years ago, leaving 3 children who were between the ages of 12 and 20. Like, that is worse regardless of whatever I went through. Without any detail of how that happened, it's worse. Um, Speaking to people in hospital who, I didn't know when I was getting out, but I knew I'd get out. They didn't know if they were getting out ever.
No.
And so, and speaking to people that were, going in for treatment, when I was home from hospital, and meeting people that were having treatment on their year anniversary or 2-year anniversary of having cancer, and me thinking, well, I know I'm probably having more treatment in a shorter period of time, but I should be done within a year. I'm not going to be in hospital having cancer treatment, having chemo on my year anniversary, but you are, and you've probably got 3 more of that, like, just constantly. So I'm very aware, and weirdly very, yeah, just a reshift of mindset around how bad people have it, and that I'm conscious that I think people always have it worse. I think
Yeah.
the second one is, just about leaning in more to things that I enjoy. Like, I just want to do things that I enjoy all the time. So I probably feel happier. Like, I don't I don't do things I don't want to do anymore. um, if I don't want to do it, I'll just not do it, or find a way to not do it, because I want to choose to do things that I enjoy. And if that means doing nothing, I'm very comfortable with that. I quite enjoy sometimes doing nothing. But yeah, I find that I'm very comfortable now making choices about where I want to spend my time, because I want to enjoy the things that I do more.
So how, maybe as a final question from my end, how has your family changed, your family relationship? I mean, the girls they're quite
Yeah,
young,
they're
right?
5 and 6.
They might not have the recollection or luckily they might just go, "Oh yeah, daddy was ill," but you know, has it changed you as a family? I mean, you mentioned your wife as
Yeah.
well, right? What impact it had on her?
I definitely think it has. I think, in particular, my wife and my eldest worry a lot more about things.
Yeah,
So, um, with all the eyesight stuff, I was making jokes about it within minutes of getting home, finding out what was going to
yeah,
happen. And my youngest is the same. They love knock knock jokes, and they're not very good at them. But she told a joke. She's like, "Knock knock, who's there? Daddy, daddy who? Blind."
yeah,
Right? Like, just making jokes. Whereas my oldest is far more sensitive about things like that. I think she just has that bit of anxiety. She's telling her teachers at school, "Daddy's going blind," and I'm not. But there was a bit of time where we didn't really
yeah,
know what was going to happen, and so she's definitely feeling it a bit more. And after one of my surgeries, she came into the bedroom when I was just at home recovering, and she's like, "Why are you always sick?" It's like, well, right now I'm
yeah,
not sick. I've just had surgery, and I'm fine. It's going to be fine.
yeah,
So there's definitely, like, a bit more anxiety, I think, around some things. Um, but I think we're maybe more relaxed as a family in many ways as well. Like,
yeah,
I feel like we're closer together. We're definitely stronger than we've ever been as a family. Not that we were not strong before, but definitely brought
yeah,
us
yeah,
all closer. Um, and I for a long time, I felt like a worse dad because I was sick and couldn't do things and didn't either have the strength or the energy or the capacity to, I mean, I remember the first few weeks home from hospital, I'd like noticed the kids doing stuff that needed parenting and just not be able to even engage with it. And I'd feel like I was letting everybody down. But I definitely feel like a better parent now for it all. And mine and Maddie, my wife's relationship is stronger than it's ever been. I mean, I don't think you can go through that experience where, she was wiping my bum in hospital and sitting there like watching me not be able to hold a conversation and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And, I don't think you can go through that and not be stronger if you're there engaged in it, So yeah, we're definitely stronger, but I think happier as well.
Well, unfortunately, that is all we've got time for, John. I mean, that it is an incredible tale. Sorry you had to go through that, but like what you've sort of said there, about making the family stronger, and I think with these sort of situations, fortunately, if it doesn't have the worst outcome, then there's always a yin to the yang, I guess, is sort of my attitude. I mean, if people want to sort of get into, I mean, you've obviously talked about your podcast that you did, and obviously you have got your business. So if people do want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so LinkedIn's probably the easiest way. John Richardson on LinkedIn, and if you want to kind of hear the far more in-depth version of the story, the podcast is called Bad Blood. So find us on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this. I'm sure we'll be as well.
Brilliant.
There's a business called My Sales Coach. We should mention that as well.
Yeah. Sorry, this is. We're recording on my my 10th day of our 9-day fortnight, and so definitely clocked out of work for this conversation. But yes, My Sales Coach. And yeah, there's definitely far more interesting LinkedIn posters than I am for the business. But yeah, you can find them all through me.
Fantastic.
Thank you,
very
Tom.
much.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Feel free to reach out to Volker or David via our website, www.manupdown.com or podcast@manupdown.com, with any feedback or to let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Hear you again soon.